Hey there, welcome to this episode of the Space for Magic podcast. I am your host, Patty Lennon, and today's episode is a follow-up from the episode we had 2 weeks ago, episode number 242, where we talked about, what to do when you're feeling lost. We received a number of responses to that particular episode. It really struck a chord, and I wanted to continue this conversation because I think it speaks to what a lot of people are experiencing right now. And certainly up until just recently, I was in it myself. And what that is this feeling that you are wandering without direction. That might be how you're feeling it. It might be that the resources you need aren't really showing up. It might feel like you don't have a purpose, or you've lost your purpose, or you feel like at one point you really were on track and now you're not on track, and the things you're doing aren't working, even when they felt like inspired action. All of these symptoms, the underlying cause of these symptoms is the belief that you're not enough. And you're going to have to stick with me for a moment as I walk you through why that is, or what I'm talking about. So we have, all of us, humanity, experienced this period during the pandemic where we went into isolation, and it caused our brains to really, fire up, that fear brain to really fire up. Now, you might not have experienced it as fear, but I'm telling you, your brain in the back is like, we better be on watch to see what other shoe is going to drop. Because a big shoe dropped that we weren't expecting. Whether you experienced it as a huge negative experience or not, your brain experienced it as a huge disruption. Something it did not think was possible suddenly became possible, which sends it into a tizzy. You may think you have gotten back to a certain level of stasis or quote unquote normal. Your brain actually hasn't. Your brain is on watch. It is watching on the horizon for what might go wrong, right? If you are wondering, and anytime you think about doing something, you go through all the reasons why it might not work, all the reasons why it could go wrong, this is a symptom of that experience. Your amygdala is in charge. Now, that experience of your amygdala being in charge and constantly looking for how things could go wrong pulls you away from possibility. It pulls you away from hope. It pulls you away from potential. And these are all the energies that take you on your path that feels like you're in the right place, that feels like you're on track. That didn't start with the pandemic. That started when you were born. When you were born onto this planet, I grew up Catholic, and there was this concept called original sin. And a lot of people misunderstand original sin. The way it's taught traditionally in the church is that, you come, you're born, and from the moment you're born, you sort of have this original sin that has to be washed away by a sacrament, by baptism. But really what original sin is it's the belief you assume when you come into this being, this human being, that tells you you're separate from the divine. And that separation, that illusion of separation, leads you to conclude that you are not worthy of the divine's acceptance, that you're not worthy of the divine's love, that you are not enough. And that is taught to you from the moment you can pick up experiences around you. People that teach it to you don't mean to teach it to you. It's just handed down from one of us to the next, to the next, to the next. Every time you have a desire and you're told that that desire isn't acceptable, worthy, important in any way, shape, or form, you're also told you, the very core of your being, is not enough, right? That's how that conclusion is made. And so you work hard to be acceptable to the people around you. You work hard to be who they want you to be so you can feel enough. But the problem is everything you're doing to try and be acceptable to others is oftentimes ignoring who you truly are. And so then this gap starts to form between who you really are and who you're trying to be. And that chasm in the middle is really that not-enoughness experience. Now, we all grew up with that. We're all in the process of healing it, ideally, if we're doing work on ourselves. But then we meet the pandemic and we go into isolation, and all of a sudden, even though our conscious mind understands we didn't do something wrong to cause this, there is a piece of our brain that's going, wait, why is this happening? Why is this happening? I thought that if, fill in the blank, whatever you thought would get you what you want, if I meditated, if I followed my purpose, if I was a good person, if I would be safe. The reality is you were physically safe, but your brain didn't actually know that for sure during isolation. And so what happened then was we started making choices to navigate that time in the quote unquote safest way we could. And safety meant something different to every person. It meant something different to every person. Then we were in conflict sometimes with our community of origin. Different people were choosing to navigate the pandemic and isolation differently, and that caused conflict, right? And then inside that conflict was this question in our brains of, wait a second, one part of my community is doing this, another part's doing this. How do I fit in? How do I do this? And so our brains were constantly reorganizing and renegotiating what made us acceptable. And all of that did was amplify this old gunk that we are not enough. And worse, that we'll never be enough. And we might think we're not enough, which translates into not having enough money, not enough love, not enough support, not enough of the material things, right? So if you're seeing any lack show up in your life, it's a symptom of this core belief. On top of it, we are in the period of massive evolution energetically in humanity and on the earth. And so as we're going through this transformation, we are changing. The things that worked for us no longer work for us. So now we can't even rely on what used to work for us. Because even though we found what worked for us, maybe through a spiritual channel or a personal development channel, now none of that is working. And that was one of the things I heard a lot from people who listened to the episode 242 about the metaphorical desert, was this feeling of like, I think I'm doing the right things. I follow what I thought was inspired action, and then it doesn't work out. Part of the reason is sometimes we misunderstood what the inspired action was. And part of the time it was that the inspired action was taking us in the right direction. It was just going to take us on this very curvy road as we navigate this period of transformation. And what we really want are signs that we're safe. Meaning, okay, if I'm going to have the courage to follow this inspired action, I want a material gift to show up instantly. I was one of those people. I was like, my fists in the air, yelling at God, you better send me a manifestation so I know I'm doing this right. And it's not that the manifestations aren't coming. It's not that the gifts aren't coming. It's just they're not coming quickly. And that's just the nature of the time we're in. So without this proof that we're doing it right, it becomes uncomfortable. And already our amygdala is scared and our fear brain is like, give me back control, give me back control. And so we then we start going back to these old behaviors of doing what everyone else wants us to do, what makes other people happy, or what's more socially acceptable, what looks like what everyone else is doing, or we give up, or we feel frustrated. And what I want you to know, what the divine wants you to know, is you are absolutely enough. You are not getting this wrong. What we need to engage right now is more patience, which is so unfun, right? Patience is so unfun. And trust that we really are headed in the right direction, even if the proof isn't showing up immediately. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing is we start to really re-engage what we know to be true. I've talked about this here on the podcast plenty of times before. One of the rules of receiving, the receiving method, is do your 100%. So what I strongly recommend you start doing is go back. If you did this with me and you had followed the receiving method and you've lost track of it, re-engage this. And if you're new to this, I promise you this will shift things. Start to write down what you're intending to do over the next day, over the next week. Go work off of a task list. But before you engage it, once you've written it, really scan it and feel what feels like your 100%. And the way you know what your 100% is if it feels like flow. If it feels like flow. Or the opposite is if it feels like you're pushing a boulder up the hill to get it done, put it down. Put it down, meaning don't do it. This is going to take a tremendous amount of courage, but I promise you this will start to shift things very quickly. The second thing is to notice how much you already know what to do, meaning what feels like, I really feel like this is where I'm supposed to be going. And you're not doing it either because you believe it's not going to work out, or you're scared to get your hopes up that it will work out. That was actually my big aha as I went and did my internal seeking was, so I've got this little whisper of I'm not enough. I had been doing some things over a very long period of time that I expected were going to yield results, both material results and spiritual results and emotional results and all the results. And they didn't come to fruition. And so I got extremely disappointed. And I had to stop for a while. I had to stop for a very long while. And I talked about that in that episode 242. I had to stop for a while because I personally was having a very hard time believing I could survive more disappointment. And that's okay. That's okay if that's where you are, is if I just can't follow hope. I can't follow possibility. I cannot follow potential right now because if it doesn't work out, I'm just so tired of being disappointed. It's okay. Rest. The Divine Mother wants you to rest. And I promise you, she is taking over. When you put something down, she is taking it over. But here's the key. If you worry about it, once you've put it down, it's like you're taking it back. So every time you worry about it, you want to just then again say, please, Divine Mother, please, Divine, please, Universe, please, Source, whatever word you use, please take this over. Please solve this challenge. Please show me what to do. Now, the final thing I want to tell you about is if you're listening to this episode when it drops, I have, because of the big reaction we got from that episode I just mentioned a few times, I've designed a new training. Now it is going to go live tomorrow. I'm going to be doing it live tomorrow as of when this episode drops. So that is May 18th. So you can find that at pattylennon.com/training. It is how to find and embrace your soul's purpose. In that, we're going to talk about, how to stop second guessing yourself, how to start feeling that purpose again, even when your immediate reality isn't changing instantly. And I'm going to also walk you through how I got back into the flow of my life, because that's really what being in your purpose is you are always living your purpose. You came to embody a certain level of energy, to embody the light that is your life. You're living your purpose right now, just by being alive, by breathing. what most people mean when they say, I don't know what my purpose is anymore, is this feeling that I'm not using my life well. I'm not using my time and energy well. I'm not happy. I'm not enjoying my life. And not meaning like I'm not getting everything I want, but just this qualitative sense that your life is good, right? That you are where you're meant to be. Well, that is really just being in the flow, right? That's following inspiration. That's following the divine guidance you receive. And it's all about trust. So we will be doing all of that. We'll talk all about that in the training. Go to pattylen.com/training. And if you're catching this late and the replay is still available, you'll be able to sign up for that there. So that training will happen at 2 p.m. Eastern. I hope you join us. For now, what I want you to understand is that feeling of not enough, wherever it's showing up, it is the original illusion. It is the illusion. So if you knew you were enough, if you knew you've done enough, if you knew you had within you enough to accomplish every desire you had, what would that change? That's the navigating question to check in with. And I certainly hope it gives you something helpful to shift some energy around inside of you. Do you have questions? Do you have feedback about this episode? Please share it with me, patty@pattylen.com, because as I said, all the feedback we got from episode 242 generated this episode as well as the training we're going to give tomorrow. And I'm going to keep putting new content out there to support you. And your feedback helps me do that well. So thank you in advance. I send you all my love, and I wish you nothing but space for magic.